A very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I want to welcome you to this dissemination workshop for the assessment report on the investment and deployment opportunities for persons of concern and host communities here in Uganda. I want to take the pleasure of recognizing the presence of the chair, the acting chair of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, Ms. Sarah Kajingo, the CEO of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, Mr. Stephen Asimwe, and all the stakeholders who are here, some of them from the community development organizations and also the NGOs that are working within the community or the host communities in Uganda, specifically the northwest, and of course western Uganda. I want to welcome members of the Fourth Estate and all the stakeholders in this room that include members of the private sector that are here that will be engaging with us this morning. Shortly we will have opening remarks, and then we will turn to the presentation this morning on setting the tone, youth investment and employment opportunities of persons of concern and host communities here in Uganda. And then we will move into our panel discussion that will be looking at that presentation that will be shared this morning. I will then close with the perspective of young people on the study and the findings that have been shared, that will have been shared this morning. So I now want to take the pleasure of inviting the chair of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, Ms. Sarah Kajingo, to come and make her remarks. And round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And I know she has another engagement, so Sarah, I will allow you to leave as soon as you've done your presentation. Then I will invite the CEO. Please come, Sarah. Another round of applause for Sarah Kajingo.
Thank you, Maurice. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our esteemed implementing partners, the CEO of PSFU, my name is Sarah Kajingo, the Vice Chair of Private Sector Foundation. Our teams from LFS, please stand up for recognition. Thank you for putting this together. Members of the private sector, thank you for making time to attend. Na nyinyi wageni yetu, habari gani? Nafurahi sana kuwaona. Naona nyinyi wengi muko watu wa Congo. Je peux parler un peu de français. Bonjour. Karibu sana Uganda. Mnajua namna Uganda tuko wavuaze wazuri. Tunawapenda sana na tunawakaribisha. Presida wetu anawapenda na sisi wote. Karibu sana. Umetoka na Chiva leo wala wapi? Ramanja. Mimi najua mpaka Chaka, naendaga kule kwa visite Bunya na pajua, na ninajua mashida yenye muko nayo. Tunayua marebeli yenye bako huko, na namna mnakimbia vita, mnakimbia wazazi, watoto, na mnajua namna Uganda inasaidia sana. Jeshi yetu hapa inasikilizana, presida wetu amesikilizana na presida wetu Excellence Tshisekedi kuwasaidia kuona ile marebeli watoke Maituri, watoke Kivu, na jeshi yetu juzi ilienda mpaka Mombasa wakawapiga wale wa Kodeko na ADF. Hivi tunafikiri masiku hizi ndani ya miaka miwili mitatu hivi hizo shida zitapunguka kidogo. Lakini sisi tuko hapa kuona namna tunawasaidia na Mastercard Foundation na NGOs zingine. Asante sana, karibu sana. Yeah, all protocol observed. Morning once again. As you know, PSFU is the apex body of the private sector of Uganda. We represent over 2.5 million businesses across several sectors: professional services, oil and gas, logistics, ICT, trade, tourism, creatives, and our board is uniquely structured in a sense that we are elected to the board. And so we are executive, which is very, very unique, that the leadership of PSFU emerges from within our sectors. So I bring you greetings from our chairman, Humphrey Nzei, who is not here. He's outside the country on another business engagement, and the rest of the board of the private sector. As you know, Uganda hosts the highest number of refugees in Africa, about 1.5 million. But you also know that our policy on refugees is very magnanimous. We have actually been commended for having to refugees that we open our arms, open our borders to whomever has trouble, because we really, really understand the issues we face. Our implementing partners, I was just telling them in Swahili that Uganda and the DR Congo are engaged in an operation against the rebels in your area, in Kivu, in Ituri, and we hope that that operation will be able to get rid of the negative forces so that you can go back to your homes, engage in production, bring up your children. But meanwhile, you're always welcome to Uganda. As you know, Uganda has been voted severally by expatriates as the friendliest country in the world. No wonder our doors are open to whomever runs away from danger. So you're always welcome. Feel free. Our policy in Uganda is, like I said, very magnanimous. You can engage in production. You can move freely to Kampala. You can even get assimilated. So, and I can see all of you are quite happy thanks to the partnership with our development partners. We know that you are a big market to businesses, to goods and services, while we must ensure that your provided services, education, and health, you too are engaged in production, and we continue to learn that your consumption is about $485 million annually. And this presents a huge potential to develop agribusiness value chains, formalize access to finance, and engage private companies in the provision of renewable energy products. Consequently, PSFU, in collaboration with our valued partners, Mastercard Foundation, commissioned this study to assess the available youth investment and employment opportunities among our very welcome refugees and host communities in Kampala, Bidibidi, Nachivale, and some of the identified work opportunities include catering, chefs, hotel managers, electricians, masonry, farm managers, retail, wholesale shop attendants, translators, tour guides. As you know, we have a very, very beautiful country, sales executives, plumbers, digital marketers, warehouse managers, among others. We do believe that this and more of the report findings, as will be presented to you, will be used to inform the work of each one of us in ensuring that we take advantage of the business opportunities and create dignified work opportunities. Lastly, I would like to appreciate government through the Office of the Prime Minister for partnering with the private sector to promote business in these settlements. We are convinced that your continued partnership will even be more enhanced through an MOU to support the business community and create more work opportunities. And I therefore declare this engagement open, and I wish you a productive day and a productive meeting. Thank you very much for God and my country.
Makofi tafadhali ya Sara Kajingo. Asanteni sana Sara. I didn't know Sara unazungumza Kiswahili ile yenyewe ya DRC. Niliuliza Swahili yako iko poa. Asante sana. Now that's where all my Swahili ends, and I will probably need to go to class on that. But we want to appreciate all of you, our partners who have just walked in on behalf of Private Sector Foundation Uganda, and on behalf of MasterCard. We welcome you to this dissemination workshop, and I want to thank you for joining us this morning. We'll not keep you here too long. After the remarks, we'll move into the presentations and then our very short panel discussion. I now take the pleasure of inviting the CEO, Private Sector Foundation, Stephen Asimwe, to come and make his remarks, and immediately after that we'll run into the presentation. A round of applause for Stephen Asimwe, our host.
Thank you very much, Maurice. Good morning to all of you. The Vice Chairperson of the PSFU, Madam Sarah Kajingo, is leaving shortly, but I need to recognize and also thank you for speaking in a language that communicates very well with everybody. Kiswahili changu sio mzuri kama ya chako, lakini nafikiri tutazungumza kidogo kidogo pamoja. I might have to stop there because I might stumble into other words and I end up missing the event. So good morning to our refugee and refugee host community representatives. We are also delighted to have the private sector players, especially those who are doing business. I think you've introduced yourselves. Our guests from the refugee host communities, and I want to recognize the private sector foundation members present, but also Mastercard Foundation, which ably supported this report, which is very, very good for us. And obviously, my colleagues from the media. I have 20 years in media, so I have to recognize my media friends. So thank you, Maurice, and everybody for coming. Inywena semenirwe muno kubabona no kubarora. Mwevale muno kuija mutio muno. You see now there I can talk something. So, like my chair said, we are very, very excited to have you this morning. I think this has been one of the best weeks for us at Private Sector Foundation, because in the last 3 days alone, we have engaged with the UN, with World Food Programme, and today we are discussing a business opportunity that arose from what you would not call a very desirable situation. Leaving your country to go to another country to seek refuge and homage from anything from war, conflict, natural disasters is not very comfortable. And so we want to applaud the government of Uganda for providing a conducive environment for people to be able to go home, away from home. I have had discussions with the UN, and they have told me that the model in Uganda for refugees is different from other countries. So in other countries, what happens is that when people run away from any one of the conflicts that I have talked about or unfortunate situations, they put them in camps. And there are barricades and fences, etc. But in Uganda, it is open space. People are allowed to live in communities. And host communities are able to interact with people running away from these disasters. And therefore, the traditional method of giving aid and relief has stopped. But the method and the methodology they're now employing is to be able to empower refugees and those people living in a communal setting. Now, just allow me to talk about history. Many years ago, we didn't have boundaries like we know today. So people moved from one community to another. And so, in the African tradition, it would be welcome to people coming in from other places. And so that model has been used in Uganda by default because of our natural ability to be empathetic to people coming in from other places. So we need to thank the government of Uganda most sincerely for creating that enabling environment, and I think they deserve some applause for that. Now, having said that, the development partners took advantage of a model which was conducive for refugees and their host communities, and they decided to bring in a private sector element. So 1.5 to 1.7 million people provide a good constituency of people who can be engaged in business. And so the PSFU was approached during a discussion, and we quickly offered to provide that enabling environment, because PSFU by its nature is responsible for policy and advocacy to create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. My chair ably discussed the sectors that are involved, but from a business perspective, $485 million is a good business, and that's why we have you people here in this room. As a matter of fact, I think yesterday we had a meeting with the World Food Programme in which it was said that about $44 million is spent annually, at least $44 million is spent annually around this fantastic constituency. And so this annual consumption of 485 is actually bigger than the entire budget of some of the ministries of Uganda. So I'm calling upon the business community to take advantage of being able to supply this environment. And PSFU, by the very nature of its composition, we're involved in agriculture, agribusiness and forestry, and you are our members. So this is a good time to plant everything that is consumed in this constituency. 2, we do support transport and logistics. So we should be able to take advantage of moving goods from one side of the country to this area to be able to supply financial services, money, mobile money, insurance, etc., skills. We know that many of these people have come into our country and they are speaking another language. You saw me, trying to balance some Kiswahili. This is a time to teach. We hear that there are so many teachers without jobs. This is a time to come and bring those skills. PSFU has a health and education sector. This is time to take advantage. We are involved in creative arts, so music, entertainment, all of these are very good. So clearly, the people in this room have at their disposal over $450 million. You don't have to go very far. Changwali is less than 2 hours from here. Nakivali is less than 4 hours from here. So between driving here and one of these places, someone who is going to South Africa by flight, you will have gotten there, made a business call, and actually got. So this is a good opportunity. And PSFU has come to the forefront of connecting this fantastic opportunity that is there between the development partners and the private sector and this refugee host community. So against that background, we partnered and collaborated with the MasterCard Foundation, and we did a study to assess the investment and employment opportunities, mainly in Kampala, Bidibidi, and Nachivali. And that research, we believe, will be used to inform us, because part of our work is to inform policy, to look at the benefits, the ones I'm talking about. There are so many benefits that will come from this. And so we brought this research, this information, and these opportunities closer to you. Now, for us to be effective, ladies and gentlemen, we have decided to we've decided to be proactive and put up a desk for refugees at PSFU. So all you need to do is to come to PSFU, check with that desk and ask what sort of opportunities there are for you to supply. And I know there are many people here and so that desk, and for media purposes, this is a good angle. PSFU has set up a refugee desk so that we can inform the public, but especially the business community, about opportunities that are available. So come, we shall walk you through what opportunities are there, how to deal with this community, so that then you can then take advantage of that proposition. Now, for us who are here as business people, I would like to employ you, 1, issues of traceability. Who are you? How's your company registration? What sort of services or goods are you bringing in? What are the standards? How reliable are you? If you promise to supply X number of tons per whatever, are you consistent? Now, the people we are dealing with are very brutal when it comes to what you promise to do. So please deliver. don't bring food with aflatoxins, food which is standards, whose standards are very low. Please keep your word, ensure you deliver on time, and have a good working relationship with the host communities. And finally, I would like to suggest that this program is largely targeting youth and women, because we feel and strongly believe that these are communities which are full of very, very young people. And so I would like you to take advantage of that. But also to the refugees and the people in the refugee host community, it is not always good just to take from these people. Nilikuwa naomba watu wa refugee wakimbizi, na nyinyi yuko na services naweza kuleta hapa kwetu. Muko na professional services, muko na business, naomba mulete. So the refugees also have very, very professional people. I'm aware that, for example, there are some services they have. They know French and Kiswahili, and many Ugandans don't know French and Kiswahili. So as we teach them English, they'll also be teaching us French, they'll be teaching us Kiswahili, and many other languages that are from the neighborhood. But the other bit is that they will also be, I'm aware that in the communities that are there are guys who have very good crafts and all sorts of fantastic creative skills. So let's go there with a view to also receiving and paying for these services. So I know there's so much to talk about, development skills, capacity building for advocacy, but also to link you up with other businesses, because the products that we shall take from here, we shall also be used for export purposes. So with those few or many words, if you like, thank you very much for coming. Please, please, please talk business. It's give and take. Let's share experiences, and let's take advantage of this report. And big thanks to MasterCard Foundation. Thank you very much for God and my country.
Thank you very much, Bwana Stephen Asimwe. Asante sana. Itu abaruga mukamp ntukuzima muno. Nanyoru toro hatirwa weraho. We are transitioning to our next presentation, and I'm glad Stephen did thank MasterCard Foundation who supported this assessment report. I'm not sure if there's someone from MasterCard here. We would be appreciative to recognize you. But we will now move to the presentation on youth investment and employment opportunities in persons of concern and host communities here in Uganda. Our presenter this morning is Cecilia Kengoro Mutabanura, who is the Partnerships and Engagement Specialist at the Private Sector Foundation Uganda. Over to you, Cecilia. And if you're overrunning on time, I will come and alert you. But I know you will manage the time this morning, because we don't have a long engagement with our partners this morning. Thank you. Over to you, Cecilia.
Thank you, Maurice. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this engagement when we take a look at this report that PSFU has undertaken to really understand what opportunities are in the refugee space. Our partners, our members have sort of crept into the refugee space, not intentionally, but now we are taking the time to think about what does this mean for your business? What are the opportunities there? Can you dig deeper? Is there, are there opportunities to truly invest, or are there opportunities to engage more young people? And so this is what we're going to go over this morning. So tech team, if you could just pull up the, thank you. So first of all, we have come to realize, as you heard earlier speakers say, that a lot of persons with concern have the necessary skills and capacities to either run businesses, certainly to consume. A lot of them have purchasing power and are receiving remittances on a regular basis. And basically their annual consumption expenditure comes to about 485 million USD. So potential to develop agricultural value chains, formalize access to finance, engaging private companies is immense, as well as provision of renewable energy products in refugee spaces and host communities. We also see that these individuals are being very active also in the urban spaces, as you will see later in this presentation. But we just also want to take the opportunity once again to thank the Mastercard Foundation for working with us to undertake the study, and here are our findings. Okay, so first of all, the study covered the areas of Nachivale, or the settlements in Nachivale, Bidibidi, and Kampala. We intended to also cover Ramanja, but then because at the time there were issues with the Ebola epidemic, we couldn't reach that area. And so that was the scope really that we managed to, Changwali. And so that was the scope that we managed to cover for the study. The sectors were agriculture, trade, tourism, construction, and trade-related services, as well as other services. And we covered within the desk review or secondary research a number of reports from UNHCR, that's the UN High Commission for Refugees, Uganda Investment Authority, ILO, and IFC. 63 businesses participated in a quantitative survey. We also conducted 6 key informant interviews with officials from the Office of the Prime Minister, private sector actors, refugee and community leaders. We also conducted 8 focus group discussions with refugee and host community youth, and the data was analyzed using Atlas and as well as quantitative, qualitative analysis. So for starters, in terms of age, you can see that youths aged 15 to 30 years account for 58% of the population. We also have adults above 30 years accounting for the balance, that's 42%. In terms of the females within the host communities, that's 29%, whereas we have males at 71% in the host communities. While in the refugee camps, we have 51% female and 49% male. Now, when it comes to the level of education vis-a-vis the nature of business, we are looking at retail business taking up the majority of those who are most educated. So about 18% are in retail, those who have covered tertiary education, and those who have gone up to secondary education account for about 23% in the retail businesses, and then 20% who went only up to primary. Those without education also dominate this space, accounting for about 50% of those in that space. We also have quite a few of them in animal and crop production, as you see. We have a significant number of those who went through secondary education doing hairdressing and beauty, and this was primarily reserved for ladies in those camps. We have a few also in tailoring and knitting. It's also a common economic activity in those spaces, as well as transportation, which again is dominated by the males. So when it comes to the nature of prevailing businesses, as we mentioned earlier, retail businesses is still very strong, both within the host community and the refugee settlements. We also have, again, animal and crop production, tailoring and knitting, also very strong on hairdressing and beauty, especially within the host community. We mentioned transportation, hotels and restaurants. When it comes to hospitality, we are looking at mainly farm managers, cooks, caterers, sometimes even translators. And then we have other skilled and semi-skilled work, which these refugees participate in or take part in. So the work opportunities, specifically in the agricultural sector, in Bidibidi, 81% farm managers. That's a very strong or attractive activity for the refugees in that camp. Nachivale, 11%, smaller, but still within the agricultural space. Kampala, obviously, because there's not it's not very practical to have a lot of agricultural activity. There was not much reported in that space. We also have agricultural marketers, very strong in Kampala especially, and in Nachi Valley. We had animal breeders, 33% in Bidibidi, Kampala 22%, and Nachi Valley 89%. We had, of course, vets, especially in Bidibidi. In Kampala, we had 45%, and Nachi Valley as well. Very strong in Kampala and Nachi Valley were caterers or cooks. We also had field coordinators. These do some bit of online marketing, but they also support with things like sourcing on behalf of the organizations or businesses they work for. And then we also have online marketing, especially in Kampala. We have interpreters, research assistants, and tour guides. So when it comes to the trade and services sector, tailors, as I mentioned earlier, very common among the ladies, especially when you look at Bidibidi, but also in the Nachi Valley camp. We had motorcycle technicians, and mostly, again, these are male-dominated. We had waiters or waitresses across the board, some community health workers across the board, and then marketers in Kampala and Nachi Valley. So in terms of what we're discovering, first of all, these are some of the partners that our study intercepted. We have ABSI, Wakati Foundation, Unleashed, Nsamizi, Alight Foundation, Seford, World Hunger Health, Jesuit Refugee Service, and Seed Effect, supporting refugees to get work. They are already very strong in these spaces, and so if any of us is seeking to enter these areas, especially for our business or private sector partners, this might be some partners to look into. And for the youth, they shared some sentiments around why they find, where they find the opportunities, but also where the challenges in acquiring these opportunities are. So one participant based in Zambia said that the current opportunities where youth can work are being a tailor, a barber, providing manual labor at construction sites for boys, a hairdresser for the girls, and making snacks like mandazi. So as you can see, it's easier, first of all, for them to be placed in these spaces where they, it's not salaried work per se. They have to be self-employed in many cases because of issues which you'll see later, issues like trust by the host communities, or at least Ugandans or locals, but also skilling challenges or limitations around education. They say there's discrimination and mistrust from employers as they think that refugees will leave anytime. For some of our partners who have engaged refugees, they can share with us what is the experience. Are they as mobile as we think they are? And then another one is that some managers of employing organizations request for bribes, which we don't have, even if it's cleaning. So again, we'll be listening maybe to the panelists and hearing their experience on those. So, what are the work opportunities? The big question for our partners who are working in these spaces. If you want to enter that space, where do you put your money? Which value chains, which spaces do you want to influence? In agriculture, we saw post-harvest storage facilities, fish farming, grain processing, agroforestry, poultry production, manufacturing inputs and fertilizer supply, vegetable and fruit production. When you look at the report, it will especially emphasize that vegetable and fruit production is particularly common in the West Nile area. A small bit to in the southwest or Nachi Valley, because most of them are more engaged as farm labor. Then when it comes to tourism and hospitality, you're looking at hotels, restaurants and lodges, events management services, sports, entertainment and recreation centers, craft production, cleaning services and drug shops. Again, this is fairly, this is an industry that has really taken the lead in incorporating refugees. And so we want to applaud the tourism sector. They are engaging refugees in work like waiting or waitresses and waiters. We are looking at translation services, hotel managers, and the like. Then when it comes to energy and lighting, there's potential for solar batteries because, of course, in those areas, maybe the national grid is not reaching quite well. So solar batteries and panels, lantern distribution, production and distribution of fuel briquettes and energy-efficient stoves. You might have come across many studies or at least information about how, especially in the West Nile area, there's quite a bit of deforestation, and so there's been a very deliberate drive to ensure that the refugees adopt cleaner cooking technology, and in many cases that they're using biomass, and now a lot of them are actually in the production of briquettes and the like. In construction, this is again another area that's very attractive, especially to males in refugee settings. They are quite involved, as you saw earlier, in welding, in masonry, in bricklaying, and so on. But still, there's opportunities around real estate development, construction of hotels and lodges, construction of affordable housing units and apartments, as well as concrete products and slabs. So, of course, there are all these opportunities, and naturally you'd ask, why aren't we there yet? Bureaucracy. We experienced just in undertaking this study that accessing these spaces or even engaging the refugees was quite a challenge. You have to go through certain commandants and then probably paperwork through the Office of the Prime Minister, not forgetting, in some cases, our internal security organs and so on. So there's bureaucracy in that, probably with good reason, but perhaps we can find a workaround in those areas so that it's not limiting, it's not a disincentive to those meaning to invest in those spaces, especially knowing Uganda's deliberate effort to really incorporate and have a stronger refugee transformation agenda. You're also looking at discrimination. Some of the youth are denied work due to their nationality status. A lot of them, as you saw earlier, mentioned that they are looked upon with suspicion, and also many times they, because they are refugees, are sometimes considered to be less skilled or less educated than they truly are. Then there's poor infrastructure in host and settlement and refugee settlement communities to support economic development like transport connectivity and health services, as well as low education. You will see within our report that a lot of refugees have, especially those in the camps, have only maybe gone up to early secondary education. A few of them complete secondary, and a few are still complete tertiary level education. And so that, especially being in a foreign land, that limits them to really odd jobs and manual labor, as opposed to actually taking up more work that they could potentially have managed. So I guess this is information for us to now reflect on and think about. I know for our partners, there are some of our partners in this room who we'll hear from that have already gone into these spaces, but they'll be able to share with us their experiences and tell us what the journey has been like. Can you maybe verify or give some more context to what it is we've learned through this study? But more importantly, having gone first before the others, what do we need to be aware of? What do we need to take care to plan for? To which partners should we engage? You know, what comes first? Is it documentation first, or should we think about their qualifications first before anything happens? Also, what business environment is required to spur that business activity in those areas? You've taken the step as partners to broach the subject, to broach the region and enter the refugee spaces. But what else do you think would really get you over the edge, you know? Or what would make this space way more attractive for other private sector partners? Also, what are we learning from the existing entrepreneurs in these settlements? They have, a lot of them have gone against all odds to make business happen in that space. What does that look like for them? It's a good thing that we have a few in this room today. Hopefully we'll be able to hear from them. But it would also be interesting for us to take stock of what it is they're sharing, so that as we plan, especially for the Young Africa Works implementing partners, how do we make sure that our implementation, that our interventions in those spaces are impactful and meaningful? And so where do we go from here? I don't want to preempt the entire report, but having given you a bit of context, I hope you're thinking, I hope you have ideas, I hope you can come up with thoughts, or at least we are starting the conversation around what do we do next? Who do we work with? And so I now want to stop at this point. I hope I have not taken too long, and invite Maurice to invite the next speakers, who will hopefully give us a bit more depth on this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and that sets really the tone for our panel discussion this morning. And I want to invite the following organizations to join me at the stage. We will have a conversation around the presentation, and I actually think we may want to run to some slides, but I will reference some of the slides you've shared this morning. A lot of insights into the slides. So I'll request the representatives. Equity Bank, you can take the seat. UNHCR, representative from UNHCR. I did see Dr. Mwalimu. Please do take your seat, URDT. And also Grain Pulse, a rep from Grain Pulse. Okay. And I'm not sure if we have the WFP in the room, because at the time I checked, we didn't. So, Grain Pulse and Dr. Mwalimu from URDT, feel free, UNHCR, and also Equity Bank. Okay, the four seats, because at least I know. All right, so we'll do the introductions once again. So I'll start with Grain Pulse. You want to introduce yourself, and first of all, what does Grain Pulse do?
Morning, I'm Alta Taron. I'm the CEO of Grain Pulse. We are an agri-solution provider in Uganda that's supplying and working with the smaller farmers throughout the value chain. What that means is we supply fertilizer, so we are well known for our crop-specific fertilizer. We work with the farmer on extension to make sure when they invest in the fertilizer, they actually see the yield coming through. And then what's very important is when they've got the crop, is to supply the route to market. And we buy back maize, barley, sorghum, coffee, to name a few. And then also as a business, value addition in the country, very important for us. So what we do with the maize that we receive, we are making our GMO flour that we're sending back to the communities. And then also over the last year, we launched our Lisi animal feed products that we're also supplying into the market.
Well done. Thanks very much. Dr. Mwalimu, what does URDT do? And just in brief, how you resonate with this conversation this morning? Switch on the mic there. Yes.
Thank you, Maurice. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mwalimu Musheshe. I work with the an organization called Uganda Rural Development and Training Program that introduced the idea of the visionary approach to development many years ago, using principles of creating and systems thinking. I'm here to discuss one of the pathways that has been working with young people since 1993, and that is the Uganda Rural Development and Training Institute. We have other pathways, including the first women's university in Uganda, called African Rural University for women only. Now, our business has been to engage with the young people to get them away from the sympathy to empathy position. And especially as we shall be discussing about the refugees, we are working in 4 refugees camps, settlements, that is Kiriandongo, Kiangwali, Ruamwanja, and Kiaka. So we have a wealth of experience working with the young people, and I'm glad that we are discussing this topic about the opportunities and the investment and the way forward for the young people in Africa, not only refugees per se. But I see a lot of space, and that is the business we are in. To date, we have actually trained more than 3,400 refugees in 2 years in the 4 camps, and 60% are already in transition. Now, what interesting is, because we are slow in taking opportunities, some of our graduates now are in USA, some have been taken to Canada, some are in Austria, and some are in Denmark, because they have the skills that we have given to the young people, and they are already tapped on and they are out there. So what we are saying here, we still can keep them here, and they go out not by fate, but by choice.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mwalimu. Is it Equity Bank? Yes. All right. Mic closer to yourself. You want to introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are and how you come into this conversation as we talk about persons of concern.
Thank you very much, Maurice.
Pull the mic to yourself, don't worry. It can come to you. Yes, do that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maurice. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Happy to discuss the progress that Equity Bank is making within the refugee camps. My name is Nelson Mugisha. I head the programs at Equity Bank, specifically the one as regarding enterprise development and financial inclusion. And at Equity Bank, we have a range of what we call pillars. There is one in agriculture, one in energy, one in enterprise development, and the other one that is working very well with the refugees is social protection. What do we do with the refugee or with the people of concern that we interact with? We provide financial services to them. We provide them with loans. Currently, we've given out about 553 million Uganda shillings to people of concern that we've interacted with. Our intent is to make sure that when we give this money to these individuals, they actually know how to use the money. So we have a component of financial literacy that is part of the journey of getting them from where they are to where we want them to be as an institution, and that is independence economically. Thank
All right. Finally, UNHCR. You will introduce yourself, but specifically speak to the experiences on the investment and deployment opportunities for persons you currently deal with in the camps.
Okay. Thank you, Maurice, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Gerald Emoyo. I'm the Assistant Livelihoods and Economic Inclusion Officer at UNHCR. I want to thank the MasterCard Foundation and the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda for this opportunity. Quickly, as many of you are aware, UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, is leading the refugee response in partnership with the government of Uganda, specifically the Office of the Prime Minister, and more the district local governments that host the refugees. Since 2018, Uganda was one of the pioneer countries to adopt the comprehensive refugee response framework that was passed by the UN Assembly. And that means refugees in Uganda from that time were included in the national planning framework. Refugees are written into the National Development Plan 3 and by extension to the District Development Plan. That gives us the latitude to engage with a wider range of actors, and I'm happy today we are engaging with the private sector. 4 or 5 years ago, we were not talking about the private sector because it was about meeting the immediate needs. But the reality now is that for us to achieve self-reliance and economic inclusion of refugees, we have to look at a wider range of actors, including the private sector. And I'm happy that PSFU is leading us on this initiative. UNHCR, as I said, does the lead role, but most of the work is done by humanitarian and development NGOs to provide skilling programs in different areas. When Cecile presented, she presented a picture of how many are involved in agriculture, how many are involved in several trades. So partners provide training, skilling in different trades, and that's where many of the young people are involved. Some of them are involved in agriculture, though a small number, because of a number of challenges. You know, our land tenure system and the nature of our refugee management framework, where land is allocated to a household. So if you have a young person in the household, there's a limited opportunity for that person to engage in agriculture. So speaking to what Cecilia said, we do the skilling in agriculture, skilling in trade, and also partner with a number of entities to unlock opportunities. For instance, for young people to practice art and craft and scale that up, because there are a lot of opportunities in art and craft. They have different cultures, and those cultures in terms of crafts becomes product prototypes. I can give examples that for our refugees from DRC, for instance, they are very good at design, what we know as kitenge. You know, most of the best tailors we have in town are from DRC. So those are some of the opportunities we could leverage in. And also crafts. We have a number of beautiful crafts that are even sold abroad, produced by South Sudanese and refugees from the DRC. So those are opportunities that we are harnessing. But I must say they are at low scale because of funding constraint. And we could work with the private sector to develop those opportunities, refine those products, and find better markets for them by developing the value chains.
All right, thank you very much. I will ask Cecilia to let us know which slide it was on the work opportunities available to the refugees, because when we speak to that, I think that's the most critical slide, and I'll ask that we place that slide on the screen when we have it. Cecilia, you let the technical team know. I'll come to you, Grain Pulse, and this is really because you're working with young people, and we want to know what's your experience like working with young people, of persons of concern, and why did you specifically want to work with that category of people?
Thank you. I think young people and women are very important for us as a business. What we realize, if we don't get young people involved in agriculture, we don't have a business. So it's a little bit also selfish from Grainpil's perspective, but also if you look at food security in the country. Now, one of the challenges that we see is a historical challenge for agriculture, is due to the fact that we're not using high quality agri-input materials such as seeds, fertilizer. We don't get a nice yield, a high yield, and we also don't have the route to market. So for a young person coming into agriculture, it's not profitable. And I look at this and say, okay, what do I do? All this effort and I don't make any money. So for us as a business, we had to look at this and say, okay, what can we as private sector actually do to assist with this, to help us as a business? So over the last 4 years, we basically started developing our route to market approach. We expanded, having distribution centers throughout Uganda, and then where we started looking at our value chain, we said, how can we get now women as well as youth involved? So looking at our value chain, we started with extension agents. We call them our village agents. It's basically young people that we train up in agronomy, that's working with the farming community, explaining farming practices, what fertilizer to use, do demo gardens. But what was very critical for us is if we work with the extension agents, how do we make sure that throughout the year they actually can earn money? And I think with our business model, it created the opportunity for the village agents that we believe we are private sector, so we are not giving donations. We want people, we want the entrepreneurial spirit to be developed. So we are employing the village agents on a commission basis where they basically can earn money through selling fertilizer, doing demo gardens. Then also when we get to our value addition, they're helping us with the sourcing of our raw materials, as well as selling our human nutrition GMO flour, as well as animal feed product. Furthermore, so that's the start of the value chain. Then what is very important is to work with the local communities and then develop our master agents. It's basically agri-dealers that we then develop, give entrepreneurial skills, give support, branding, help them with the store setup, help with consignment stock, to develop them into businesses. Very important to make sure that we can get the youth involved, that they earn money and that they stay in agriculture for us.
Thank you very much, Theron. I'll come to Dr. Mwalimu. You spoke in your opening remarks about the number of young people in the camps you have trained. Close to 3,000, over 3,000 young people you have trained. And that for me is a very small number compared to the over 1 million people in the refugee camps. But that's the way to go. And the question now for you is, how do we then bring on board as many people as possible? How do we onboard, thousands in their tents to be able to upskill and be employable in the marketplace? And that's where private sector is coming from, and that's the conversation I'm sure MasterCard was trying to find. First of all, are they scalable? True, and we've just heard they're great tailors, even without adding any more value on the skill. I don't know any salon I've gone to that doesn't have a Congolese hairstylist. They're really great. And that, coming from a parent of daughters, I know that they're very good. So, Dr. Mwalimu, how do we scale up the training? And how can we onboard as many people as we can?
Thank you, Maurice. One, the number I've mentioned is just less than 1 year of training in the settlements. There were interruptions of COVID-19. We have committed to train 70,000 young people, 35% refugees. So we are going to cover the number. We have deployed a very big human resource base, and this is how it works. We have what we call the satellite approach. The satellite approach is we have URDT Institute at campus in Kagadi. We identified artisans in the communities who have experience in work, in apprenticeship and training. And therefore what we have now are 54,000 artisans in 20 districts. And we have 10% of those in the resettlement, the forced settlement. So it is not us only, but pairing with artisans and agribusiness people. And each agribusiness person and artisan, every 3 months, they are training 15 people. So in 1 year, it is 45 people. And all of those, of course, we consider the gender equation, people with disability, the female and male. So therefore, we have made an equation to ensure that by the structure of working with the artisans in the settlements and even hosting communities, we can actually reach the number, because every year, every artisan, if you have about, let me say, 15 artisans in a settlement, if you multiply that by 15, every 3 months, they are graduating 225 people. So yes, the number is possible. But let me say something also related to why with us as URDT Institute are excited about working with the refugees. Personally, I had an experience of working in Kahunge, current Kamwenge, and I worked near Mpanga, which was a receiving camp for refugees. And whenever we organized workshops in the host communities, the young people would come to attend. And interestingly, they would catch up faster than the locals. And that potential was never harnessed very well. I had an opportunity to work in Hoima with my organization. And by then, Kiangwali was part of Hoima district, although now it is Kikube. I experienced the same. You see, the young people are thirsty to want to learn, to want to get out of the situation they are in. Because let me tell you what, when you talk with them, living on handouts is dehumanizing. Living on handouts is dehumanizing. I'm glad time came when the government of Uganda said enough is enough of keeping people on rations, distributing oil, distributing beans, distributing things actually they could do for themselves. So there are two things. One, we have moved from aid to production because the young people have productivity potential, they have the thirst to learn, and they have the capability and capacity to learn and put it into practice. So when we move from aid to productivity, it means we are moving from sympathy, poor refugees, to empathy. We can be like them, and we share their thinking. But lastly, I think it is ideological for me. Ideological. You cannot talk about Pan-Africanism and you don't work with the refugees from Africa, sister countries. So when this opportunity was presented to scale our work in partnership with the Mastercard Foundation, it was actually a very big opportunity to scale the ideology, but also to recognize that we have the young people there. We have some of them, by the way, because of Kahunge and Kikube, and with the magnanimity of the government, we went together to school. There are some people who are in big positions,
Yes.
serving Africa and serving their countries. And I think you know,
Yes.
one of our presidents
Yes.
was from here, so you never know what the direction.
I was just about to say, we are probably looking at this, and the people you're talking about, the second generation
Yes.
of refugees that is actually now in government
Exactly.
and is actually running government affairs. I hear you. And one is on the other side as head of state. Okay.
More than one.
I don't want to. Oh yes, there was the one also in the DRC
In the
not so
DRC,
long ago.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, so-
I'll come to UNHCR before I go to Equity. And that slide, there was a slide on the opportunities. I wanted us to see this because that's where I want to come to UNHCR. These opportunities in the workplace that are available to young people. And I know you're working now with the private sector to try and see how to harness these opportunities that are available. Unfortunately, the slide is at the back, not for my panelists. So I don't know if we can give it to them on the screen here also. So speak to that. How do we harness and exploit these opportunities? As UNHCR, how much can we do with your support and partners like the Private Sector Foundation and MasterCard? How do we harness these opportunities?
Thank you, Maurice. Previously, I did mention that UNHCR and government are implementing the comprehensive refugee response framework, bring on board all actors. We call it a whole of society approach. That means we are recognizing the role of each actor, the government, private sector companies, in different areas, what they can contribute to the refugee response. So how does UNHCR and OPM and DLGs provide an enabling environment? That's what we are looking at. We are looking at unlocking bottlenecks such as business registration, access to land. You know, in Uganda, most of our land is not titled land, and the land tenure system is fairly complex. So UNHCR is facilitating government, Office of the Prime Minister, and the district local government to engage on access to land, especially in the North and West Nile, where many of us know there are large chunks of land that are unutilized. So we're exploring win-win opportunities, but also putting in mind the need to protect refugees and, of course, the landowners, so that we can unlock opportunities to get bigger acreage of land. We are already working with a number of companies, and we're looking at thousands of acres of land. In Ibidibidi, for instance, we have over 25,000 acres this year that we are working with the private sector. And that is just the start of our engagement. We hope to get more acres of land, so that we can develop value chains, high value value chains such as sesame, rice, that are profitable to the farmers, but also be able to produce the volumes that the private sector wants and the quality. So we are hoping to work with those companies along the chain to ensure the constraints are addressed, access to agricultural inputs, training, post-service handling and storage. Fortunately, we have a number of development partners that are available to address some of the constraints like, infrastructure, markets, storage, and the rest of it. So we are doing engagements with government to ensure that there's an enabling environment for companies to thrive. We are also engaging with them, doing advocacy with the regulatory authorities such as the Bank of Uganda for our colleagues in Equity and the rest of it. There are a number of constraints when it comes to access to financial services. Presently, all refugees with their refugee ID can access, open a bank account, and also get a SIM card and transact mobile money transactions. But when it comes to access to credit, there are still challenges with regard to especially regulated institutions. So partially that's what we are doing, and then we're also doing advocacy, further advocacy to address more administrative barriers when it comes to employment access.
All right.
They're speaking about discrimination and the rest of it.
I'm glad you're speaking to the challenges that were captured in the report. And I'm also happy you're talking about registration and the idea that you get them registered, even maybe get them to work on, either SACCOs or call them investment clubs as refugees, so they're able to access more capital as an institution or as an organization. But also the fact that you're talking to the Registration Services Bureau, that they get formalized, they become formal organizations that are actually able to access credit. And I'm glad you are talking about credit, and so we are turning to Equity Bank. You spoke to some of the facilities you're already providing for our persons of concern, but specifically speaking to young people, how much are you doing with these young people in these communities, and how much more can you build on this huge productive workforce that is in these areas, and how do we bring on board as many other members of the private sector to do what the UNHCR is trying to put together, the advocacy campaign to build momentum in the refugee settlement camps. So speak to your products, but also how much more you can do to bring as many other members of the private sector into the camps.
Thank you once again, Maurice. First, I would like to speak to the research that was done. I think it was spot on. Most of the feedback that was given is what we found in the camps over the past 4 to 5 years when we worked there. As Equity Bank, we work towards creating a purposeful life for everyone we interact with. And specifically for the young people, we work towards seeing them employed. And that's why we work very closely with the MasterCard Foundation, because we have the same goal, we have the same purpose. So for the young people, we've been able to craft some products, and given that the life of a people of concern, or the lives of people of concern, are often interrupted by a couple of activities. So a couple of institutions, of course, do not want to invest in there. But we've said, how do we craft a product that can work for the young people? And we've done some work in there where we allow them, or we encourage them to create groups. Some of them are popularly known as VSLAs, and we lend to the VSLA. So we've been able to lend about 500 million. Like I said, we've lent this money to the groups at an interest rate of about 15%. And at that point, there is no collateral for them. So we are saying, how do we, because the biggest challenge they find is collateral. So we work with the commandants in the various camps, and the commandants register these groups, and they give recommendations for the groups before they approach us. But that has worked out so well. If I look at the number of groups we've given money, which is about 137 now, groups of young people, and they're engaged in all the activities that were actually talked about in the research. What opportunities are within the camps? We have a force of about 5 to 6 young people who are dedicated to the camps that you're working in. And these individuals go and teach financial literacy. When they speak to the individuals within the camp, there's the opportunity that is there is we can't speak all the languages. So we have a couple of people of concern who do the interpretation for us. But away from that, we've created and we also create or help those who are able to set up agency points. Because as you notice, when someone needs cash to transact, unfortunately, we're still a cash economy. So we take the risk of bringing money to the camp as a financial institution, but we need individuals who will transact, or who will be available to help the people of concern access the funding that they're getting from all the other financial service providers. So we have given an opportunity to these people to set up agency points, and we facilitate them to set them up. Like I said, we have dedicated staff within the camps. So for us, it's not a hit and run. We establish ourselves within the camps themselves. Of course, when they tell you we have a client who has taken, I think, about 200 million within Nachi Valley to set up, a shop, that also shows a lot of opportunity. Now, that individual employs a couple of other individuals, and that is the employment we're also looking at. So we have given these people an opportunity to borrow as much money as they can. At the bank, we like to say there is no money we can't lend out. We have all the money that is there. So we give them an opportunity to borrow the money and then pay it back within, of course, the stipulated confines. But I need to say this. As a directive from the central bank, we are not allowed to lend out money that is going to leave these individuals in a worse state than we found them in. So that is a responsibility we also take. And that is why at times you might hear we have not given funding to these people, but we have to maintain them or improve them from where we found them. So that is a very important component that I thought I'd talk about.
All right. I want to open this up because I know there is institutions in this room that are already working with young people. But Doctor, yes, I'll come to you. So just to open it up, if you have an intervention you want to come in, I'm happy to come to you and give you a microphone. I know, for example, Tessie is working with women in what did you say that district is on your way to yes, Buyala. Yes, Buyala, where in the arts and crafts space they're working with a lot of young women in providing a source of income for these homes and communities, and some of them are from the refugee camps. But Dr. Mwalimu, you wanted to say something before I open this up?
Yeah, what I thought was not emphasized, and this is our experience. The young people, as we train them, they get skills, they become entrepreneurial. There is a disconnect between what they learn to do, even get income, but they don't see the context of the private sector. They don't recognize themselves that they're entering the private sector. And I think also the private sector foundation has not made it its business to make that information known. Because when we're talking about opportunities, it's not opportunities for the young people only. It's not opportunities for the government, they're going to make money because of taxes and whatever. But how is the sector itself growing, given that for a long time it has been segmented, fragmented, and weak? So is it also an opportunity for strengthening the private sector in Uganda through the engagement of young people, whether they are in the refugee camp or whether they are outside the camps in general? Because that's the mainstream. Are we streaming them into the private sector?
I will come to all of you, and this is where, because you're all working with young people, and this is where I wanted to find out, in the entire ecosystem, which is what you're talking about, as we build capacity, get them into the workforce, and then be able to integrate them into the bigger community, which is the private sector. How do we do that, and what the constraints are? I'll come to that. Any quick questions, interventions? Sijui tunauliza hii mambo ya Steven, ni wagenyi ni kama ni ile mambo ya panelist ni Swahili. Sigoa Dennis, what is panelist in Swahili? Yeah? Is there a word for panelist in Swahili? I was about to say. Sasa, okay, someone speaking, a speaker in Swahili. Mwogezi? Msemaje. Mnauliza hizi mambo ya msemaje. Tunauliza. Wasemaje. Oh, because there's more than one. Ah, my gosh, my Swahili. All right. Honestly, HCR, working through other stakeholders. But it's another to have them integrate into the community. And the report mentions the constraints, the 4 constraints. So I don't know if some of you working with young people want to share your experience. Stephen, Stephen always has an input, having been a young person before he became an elder. Stephen, let's start with Stephen. Oh, you got someone? Ah, perfect. Then I'll give Stephen the mic. Keep it short. Yes.
Thank you, Morris. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Twesika Sosim is my name. I'm the CEO of Farm Uganda. I need to thank the team which did the research. It was spot on. As Farm Uganda, we are working with the refugees already in Chidiandongo, 591 in 9 groups, and we are in the value chain of maize and cassava. It is very true. They can be self-sustainable. But the challenge, as the UNHCR has highlighted, is the challenge of land. Like for us, we're in agribusiness and that sector. So if we can partner up with the landlords with the big chunks of land, with the recommendations from like UNHCR or PM, that these people of concern can be given that land, they are very honest and they are committed of doing their work. Like the experience I've gained, I have got a very big worst scenario of side selling of our people who are partnering with us. But for them, they are very trustworthy. They aggregate their grain, we buy it at the agreed price, and then they can earn a living. So there are very wide opportunities. And at the same time, the maize that we mill, at the same time, we supply back to them, and they buy this grain. So it is spot on. I encourage this such that other businesses can take it up. I thank you.
All right. Stephen wanted to say something. I like the fact that the report captures that a lot of them, depending on where the report was done, a lot of them were in the agriculture space. And so you can see, I think if you say 519 you're working with, I think the report is spot on in terms of the number of people in the agriculture space. I didn't see a lot of them in the real estate space, which is masonry and carpentry work, because a lot of them have gone to agriculture, and I think the others have gone, the bigger number, I think I saw there was another second portion where, depending on which camp they were, you saw a lot of them also involved in other sectors, but not specifically like the real estate industry, where I saw not a big number had joined at the bottom, but a lot of them in agriculture. Do you have that slide? What number is that? So we're able to put it up. All right, Stephen?
So I just want to put context to why we have this meeting today. About 6 months ago, the UN agencies met with us at PSFU. Or we met with them. And our discussion was local content in the context of taking advantage of the amount of resources that were being spent in the country. You all know the story of oil and gas. God gave us a resource in the ground. And so when we put out this opportunity, most of the people who were supplying both goods and services were from foreign entities. And we said, no, this is not acceptable. As private sector, we must take the lead. We call ourselves the apex and umbrella body. So our first mandate is to create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive. But to do that, we need evidence-based research to inform that policy, to inform that creation of an enabling environment. And so we sat with the UN, we sat with development partners, and we said, how do we tap into this money and this resource? Remember that the dynamics of the refugee environment have changed. In the last 30 years, refugees came for 6 months to a year and they were out. Now refugees come into a place, and again, the environment in Uganda was different. Incidentally, our social political dynamic is different, as the professor said. The model in Uganda was that the refugees were coming and were going to be given support. And I think the OPM said it. So for example, the refugee tenure, which used to be 3 to 5 years at the most, has now moved to anywhere between 17 to 21. And I'm saying anywhere because the dynamics have changed. So the development partners and the interventions that were provided then looked at the environment, Uganda, friendly, good country, good environment, weather, etc., soils, blah, 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 and said, instead of giving people cash or fish or chicken in tins and stuff like that, let's make this constituency productive in nature. And therefore, they gave them tools in form of money, in form of land, in form of skills, and said, here it is. And then the numbers started to come, again, for reasons that are external in nature. The conflicts, the civil wars, etc. So when this big number came, it also came with it resources. So the business model changed from relief, hand to mouth, to empowerment, and therefore a supply chain developed. So PSFU came on the table and said, okay, how do we take advantage with a win-win situation to create this economy that can be beneficial to both groups? So now we went into overdrive. MasterCard came in with the money, we came up with the concept, and now we have developed the methodology. There is a result framework which has come out. And so this framework is in agriculture, is in tourism and hospitality, is in energy and lighting. Some journalists asked me, the environment around the refugee space is people cutting trees. We said, no, it is true, because people must cook food. But then how do we tap in with renewable energy, solar power, clean energy stoves, better ways of cooking, heating, and lighting? And that's an opportunity. So if you are into solar energy or lighting, this is an opportunity for you. But for you to know that, we must give you that information. Yep. How many people need it, in what quantities, in what numbers. And then how do we finance, facilitate, etc., etc. So quickly, because of time, we have now done the research. And then we have a deployment mechanism under the MasterCard Foundation called the Young Africa Works, the strategy. So you have agriculture, hospitality, construction, ICT, the entire ecosystem of businesses here. And so for that to happen, information is power. So PSFU has proactively set up an information desk. It is for refugees. It is for suppliers, demand and supply. But we're also saying we want to create a catalog. You mentioned something about salons. The Congolese have the best. My head has been worked on by somebody from Congo. So the GDP of that guy has changed because every time I go, I pay some money. But there's something called music and entertainment. Yep. They play the best music. I don't know of any guitarist who beats a Congolese. So we are saying, please come and join this space. It's give and take. So for us, we have developed a catalog of supply and demand. So the banks will look up on the dashboard and say, what can I offer here? The guys in the financial services, ICT, my daughter here, is providing teaching skills. So there's something for everybody. But that information must be calibrated,
Yes.
provided, and then people take advantage. So please come now, starting tomorrow at PSFU. We have data, and then we have a group of experts, people we can go to and tag team together to take advantage of this. So it is a proactive element from our side, And that's why it is important that this seminar is taking place.
All right.
But I wish you give space to these people from the refugee space so that they also tell us
Nataka
what do
uongee.
they want to hear, how can we help, and also what can they offer the business community on our side. Thank
Sawa. Asante sana, Stephen. I'm now trying to move into my Rutoro, Runyoro, whatever I can fathom
Morris?
to speak. Yes, easy?
CEO is leaving.
Ah, perfect. Stephen, thank you very much. Don't worry, we have the team, so I'm sure they will represent. Hina kuenda kubaza? Noenda kubaza? Murutoro, Runyoro, Ruswahili? Sawa, sawa. Sigoa, if you can get a mic, you must translate this Swahili. I will not be able to hear.
Asante sana. Kwa majina ni Bieza Meshak kutoka district ya Kamwenge, Ramwanja settlement. Sie sa vile wa refugee tuko na vya mengi wenye vinatusumbuaka na vingine tunafanya juu ya kukosa ingine ya kufanya. Sagi sisi wote tushaka jibaze mu agriculture, mkulima. Juu hayo tunapata mbegu direct na mashamba tuko nazo hata ni kidogo lakini tunafanya. Sie mu settlement tuko na talaza mingi tofauti lakini hatuna kwa kuzifanyizia. Niliangalia ma skills walispana za digital, za ICT. Wamingi wanakuwa wanazitupatia lakini hatuna kwa kuzifanyizia. Hapa niko na nosio mukamera, ndeza kamata foto, ndeza kamata video. Walinipatia skill lakini hakuna kwa kuifanyizia. Kamera nitaitoa wapi sa vile mimi. Ndio maana sisi wote tunajibaza ku agriculture, juu wanakuwa wanatupatia tayari na mbegu tunapanda. Nilitauliza papa Dr. Mwalimu wakifika Kamwenge Rwamwanja yetu wanatuletea sa vile ya digital au ICT. Je, watatupatia nyuma miezi 6 wanatuachililia au wakitupatia na watatupatia kwa kutumikia ile kazi? Asante sana.
Just a quick one. He has raised a couple of concerns. He has seen from the, but his concern is that, of course, they receive like for him he's a photographer, for example, maybe has learned photography, but then the challenge will be acquiring the equipment. So it won't make sense for him to go through the entire, maybe being trained, gets all the skills. Then in the long run, he has no equipment, and that means he can't even add value to himself. And he also brought out the issue of about maybe agriculture, like for example, it related it to agriculture, like you have the seeds, but you have no land where you're going to plant your crops. So he thinks they need a lot of support, and is also appreciating what is happening here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sigoa. That's really captures the conversation we're having, and I did not. Cecilia, in the presentation, I think we missed music and art somewhere. And yet this is an opportunity also we need to be looking at. Easy? Don't worry, I'll come to, don't worry, we'll come. We're coming back. You're the bosses today. Easy, yes, there is the question, then I come back to the panel, yes.
Thank you, Maurice. Charity, I work with Cyber School Technologies. There is a slide that was presented and it indicated the variance between those that have completed secondary and those that have completed primary. And that has a high correlation on the rate of skilling and being employable. As cyber, the research that we get from the employers, we still are pushing out youth that are not having the right skilling. So I believe this very discussion in trying to get youth into employment and skilling them and providing loans and providing all the vocational and farming skills, we need to also intentionally ensure that the target groups can also complete the basic educational level. If they have passed the age of accessing such education, then what other integral interventions can we do to enhance that? Because that is, for us, as a gap that we're experiencing in digitization as a program. So I think Marimo would share a bit of experience. There's a lot of investment into translation, And that it's a bit of time and everything, but if we have someone that has really succeeded in doing that so well, that would be very a good story to share. But that comparison of about 23, yes, those that have completed primary 20% and then 23, that is even below 50%.
Yeah.
So we still have to do a lot in ensuring that the literacy levels or the basic learning skills are enhanced for us to even move into the farming and all the employment opportunities.
And the opportunity there in on the 50% that
Yeah.
don't have any form of education,
Yes.
which for me is a bigger challenge that we have. So Mwalimu, we'll start with you. I think your questions are well cut out. But I saw an opportunity for us to leverage on the existing technology, and I'm glad we had an ICT person. You don't have to maybe provide a camera, but you can actually provide a smartphone that has tools for editing and filming, which would be easy to use for somebody you've already skilled. But you're the expert, doctor.
No, I think you are right, because there is a way of thinking that we get stuck with it. And we need to address the mindset change. Because yes, cameras are good, and I can see many people are using cameras. And then that becomes a template for everybody. So that if I learn how to document, I must have a camera. I've seen young people with smartphones running up and down. They are just telling the weather, sending SMSs, and that's where they stop. I think in our work, as we work with the young people, we are talking about literacy. We should make young people more functional in many areas of technology by connecting the dots. That if you have a smartphone, of course there are some who still have stupid phones, but those who have smartphones, they should know the ranges of how it can do many things, including documentation, editing, etc., etc. Now the question is, are the people doing the training literate enough, or it is blind, one-eyed person leading another blind person? So we need also to up our game if we are going to work with the young people to take them across the digital divide. That's number one. Number two, in our training, we have a mantra. We say, learn, work, and earn. What does that mean? That in the period the young person is learning, they should be working in the domain where the training is taking place, but they should also earn. Now, when we're talking about financial literacy, it should include saving and investment, so that by the time the young person graduates, has seed money, so that when they are looking for extra money, it's just add-on rather than a substitution from the traditional grants. So if we do that, the empowerment in terms of financial capacity is going to be higher. The literacy in terms of investment, saving, etc. And the secondary education and artisanship, all the skills, it is debatable. Because if you look at the environment in Katwe here, what the young people could possibly do without even going to school. There was, I think it still is, there is an old man, the Musa Bodies, who has a technology that has enabled the young people to acquire skills, even those we would call rumpens and urchins on the street. So how, therefore, are we literate functionally, even to enable the person who did not go to school to understand actually to use the minimum of technology? Why? They haven't gone to school, they still have telephones. How do they do it? They haven't gone to school, they still know what are the missed calls and missed calls, and they can call back. So why don't we take them beyond the ABC of telephone use to another level?
All right.
Otherwise, we may keep on agonizing instead of organizing, given the environment. When we are in a digital world, but the digital world should not be limited to just literacy.
All right.
We need to use it in a functional way that they become literate in digital, not just reading and writing.
All right.
By the way, for your own information, our guy is in primary,
Yes.
secondary. Given the kind of education we have, they might be functionally literate more than those guys you find in the camps or in the communities. So there is also that work.
I see the debate you're trying to generate, and we may stay here. We may stay here the entire morning, but I totally agree with you. We are wondering how scalable some of our graduates are, even out of university.
Exactly,
That's a big
yeah.
challenge.
So
Yeah.
we are at a different level,
Yeah.
and we take it on from that level.
All right.
We
So-
cannot say retrospectively, because they didn't have an education, therefore they're out of the equation.
All
no,
right.
we capture them where they are now.
Yes. Theron, let's begin the closing statements from you. And mine is really to speak to where do we go next? So we've seen the constraints captured very well in the report. And so how do we address those constraints and be able to capture, all the young people of concern, whether it's with primary education or secondary education or no education at all, and be able to address these concerns, but even pick the best out of them to increase their productivity?
Thanks a lot. So, from an agriculture perspective, we saw that dealing in refugee communities, it's more expensive. It's up to 3 times more expensive. So what is very important, we also, over the last 2 seasons that we worked on, we also saw some opportunities. And the opportunities came out of the constraints. And one of the constraints that was already mentioned was the availability of land. So when it came to harvesting, the people didn't have a place to dry their maize, for instance, and to store the maize. So we came up with a solution where we buy the maize on the cob. What it means is that grainpills then take responsibility for threshing and drying. It also helps the community members that they reduce the risk for theft that we've got. So for us as a business, we believe there's opportunities. But usually if we go into a new community, it takes us about 2 years to get to a break-even situation from a profitability point of view. However, as we need now in these communities to build trust, we see the adoption rate is going to take a little bit longer. So our indications is it will probably take us 3 to 4 years when we establish ourselves in a community to be as a business profitable. So as private sector, we all know business is tough at this stage. So you need to make a decision to say, okay, we're in here for the long term, it's going to cost us money. And I think this is where partners are very critical for us. To help us that we partner with some partners to help us with the establishment cost, the operational expense for the first 2 to 3 years to get to that break even. And then also for us as a business, what we see is if we're now working with a farmer or we're working with somebody that's in poultry, that we want to develop as a lead farm and then have outgrowers supporting them, is there's usually a working capital constraint for that initial. So as a business, although we're looking at this from a long term, we're already in a situation that for 4 years we will make a loss in this community. Now we need to take also the credit risk of providing the product on credit, and we don't know if we're going to get the money back. But if we work with partners like Equity, I think we can develop solutions where we go into community with our approach that we supply fertilizer or we supply animal feed products. We also supply the route to market for agriculture products. So if we work with Equity, it's also reducing your risk, because you know you've got an off-taker. You can support on supplying, for instance, credit for the fertilizer to make sure that the correct seed and fertilizers are used to get the yields, but you know that we will take it off at market prices because we will buy it directly. It won't go through traders. So I think this is what we need to work together. We have a lot of partners that want to do the same thing in the communities, and the only way to succeed if we work on the strength of each partner to go in as a joint approach.
All right. Nelson, so that's where the collaboration I wanted to come to comes in. You know, from her point, Theron, let's see how much more can Equity do, working with other private sector partners to be able first to build the capacity, because she's saying, listen, we have an opportunity here. How do we access land for these people? How do we bring them on board and provide facilities that will allow them increase the acreage on the productivity or even the yield of the product, so they actually make a better return from investment with their partners like Grain Pulse?
Thank you very much. I think you're speaking to the converted. We acknowledge, even with all the money that we have, we can't go at everything alone. We need partners. And we've tried to explore that opportunity in every aspect of the bank. I can give you an example. One of the recent products we have at the bank called the Anchor Model, where we lend based on trust of the individual. For example, if Grain Pulse has, as an off-taker, has an individual or a farmer who keeps supplying you, and you make a recommendation to us and say, I know this person supplies this amount. So we'll give that individual money based on a recommendation from Grain Pulse. That is how far we've gone with the partnerships. We notice the challenge that everyone has, and even the young people, is collateral. How do we de-risk this young person? One is to partner, for example, with the MasterCard Foundation. They will tell you, okay, do this, and then we see how do we come in. Can we facilitate your movement to go and teach these individuals so that when they take this money, they know when and how to pay it back? The anchor model that I've just talked about. So these are opportunities that we keep exploring and trying to see. How do we expand? How do we play at every point of the ecosystem? We've decided to go digital. We've given an opportunity to farmers to actually borrow money from wherever they are. And they can take that money for a week, 2 weeks, depending on when they need the money. Why? Because when the animal gets sick and they do not have the opportunity to run to a vet who is probably 2 kilometers away, can they just pay for the person's transport where they are? Borrow, pay for it, and the individual comes. So we are working and we encourage everyone who believes we can create that relationship. Come, let us speak. As a financial institution, our purpose as a financial institution is to create wealth for the individuals that we interact with. And that is why at the bank, we do not have CSR, because the things we do are literally CSR. Giving out a loan at 15%, you're not going to find that anywhere. Being able to move to every corner of this country teaching financial literacy, you won't find that anywhere. So what we are trying to do is to go to the individual on ground and ensure that we give them what they need to help them become economically independent.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm happy you're speaking to a group of young people that, as I think Dr. Mwalimu was saying, and even from Farmhouse, that this is an honest group of people, because I think given the circumstances, you build a character, and that's the group we are dealing with here. And so in your trying to find a method of de-risking, we are hoping you can come to a single-digit interest rate, but I think that's the difficult part. Okay, I know, Nelson, that's the difficult one, and I'll take it to the central bank. Let's go to UNHCR. You have the last word on this. So where do we go from here? You now have data, because the previous data you had was really about the numbers and where they are, what they are like, the composition of the persons of interest. But now we have data in terms of level of education and their employability, but also what they are actually doing and the skill set that they have. Where do we go from here as UNHCR?
Thank you, Maurice. We will continue with providing the data, updating it to help the private sector build a business case. The financial institutions, personally, I'm involved in collecting data on VSLS, savings groups, and trends, and sharing with the financial institutions. We also want to continue providing data on economic opportunities that are available in the refugee settlements. We are keen to share data on land that has been accessed and groups that are engaged in production. We think that should be useful to the private sector that are going up there to support refugees. We will continue with advocacy. I should say part of our advocacy is why we are here, because we engaged with the development partners and the donors, and we said refugee settlements are a market. Yeah, you know, we shouldn't look at them as receivers of humanitarian assistance, but they're also a market. Yeah, we engage with MasterCard and others, and we are happy that this conversation is going on and translating into programming. We'll continue with advocacy with our colleagues, the financial service providers and others, on issues of policy that need to be addressed to unlock opportunities for refugees. But also, there's a nexus issue, shift from humanitarian to development. Previously, refugee settlements were like a closed place. It was a place where WFP and others would play. But now we have the banks coming in, you have the private sector, businesses coming in. So we are strengthening our coordination with the partners, the humanitarian, the international NGOs, to make sure that the approaches are synchronized with the new direction. For instance, we are working on, to reduce the handouts, because you can't encourage a seed company to go and market seeds when there are so many NGOs still giving free seeds. So we're trying to put that so that we have approaches that enhance the work of the private sector. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Can we give a round of applause to our panelists for a fantastic job? I was asked by my team to thank you by allowing you to stand so we have a good photo of all of you together. Please stand, and the official photographer will have a nice photo to show that we had a good conversation. He's at the back. Please note that the photographer is at the back. So as soon as the ones at the front are done, the one at the back will take the main photo. Cecilia, do you have takeaway notes from here? I'm happy to give you 2 minutes to close this. Do you have someone from OPM who? All right, Cecilia, I think you will have the last word. Based on the conversation we've had today, Cecilia, clearly the work is cut out for all the stakeholders, and I'm excited that we now have data to work with for persons of concern, and that MasterCard and PSFU have provided this data for all the stakeholders, including government, to be able to begin the initiatives that they need to undertake for this conversation. Cecilia, please come. Thank you very much, Theron. Thank you, Dr. Mwalimu, Nelson, and the UNHCR for the conversation this morning. I will ask my boss, Cecilia, to come and let us know where we go from here. But also, based on the conversation we've had this morning, she's able to let us know how, first of all, we can access the data and the next steps after this dissemination exercise.
Thank you, Maurice. Another round of applause for our very eloquent and experienced panelists this morning. We really appreciate you sharing your journey with us and helping us understand what this experience has brought to you, but also preparing us, those of us who haven't yet explored the space of what lies ahead and what we can look forward to. As PSFU, Stephen put it very clearly, that we are on a path of discovery, and we are bringing together all players and all information for the private sector to prepare them to get into this space. We have taken a first step with our partners, the MasterCard Foundation, to understand what lies ahead. But perhaps you want to understand a particular sector or value chain. Again, we, together with our membership, who, as you know, span the entire economy, cover different sectors, are happy to explore those deeper insights together with you. But we are also really proud to note that some of our partners, like the Equity Bank, are already putting in place the building blocks, so the ecosystem parts that will bring this whole loop around. I also want to mention Uganda e-learning initiative, which is being implemented by Cyber School Technology Solutions. We mentioned that for a lot of the refugees, lacking the right qualifications was a problem. And so our partners, the Cyber School, we also have War Child Canada. They're also giving skilling in that area and building capacity to really make sure that we find the right labor market, but also we find the right business people that our companies can build a value chain with. We want to also acknowledge that we are going to share this report with you. It's being published as we speak, and so over the next few days, copies will be delivered to your addresses. So please look out for that, so you can take into a bit more depth what the report presents. The desk we have set up at PSFU is really a database of sorts, where we can find information on the private sector, which, as you've heard, we are just building upon. So if you'd like to contribute to that, again, please reach out to us. We shall continue to work closely with our partners to consolidate this information, but also to build a stronger picture of what that space needs from an economical perspective, but also not forgetting the social and integrative part of our NDP3, which seeks to really incorporate and truly integrate refugee communities into the local community and local economy. So we are looking to each one of you. You all have an important part to play, to the youth most of all. We look to you to get insights. You're the ones in what's it called? Human-centered design. You know, we can't work without you. We need you to lead the way, and we shall follow. So we are really glad, and give them a round of applause for being in the room today. We are really glad that you made it. Please work with us, speak to us. Don't come here and feel like we are talking at you. I'm really glad that the gentleman over there said something. Thank you for that. And we hope that all of you will have channels, but also will have the courage to walk up to us and share your thoughts. Walk up to the guy from Equity and tell him what you think, you know? And we really value your participation. Otherwise, again, thank you all for participating. Maurice, you did a wonderful job as usual. And yeah, I wish you a nice rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I think we are done. We did promise we would close before 10:30, and it is 10:26. So the only thing I will invite you to is more breakfast. So in case you came in and you didn't have breakfast, or in case you now want to do dessert for breakfast, we will be able to. All right. Oh yes, we want to thank the production team, Legacy. Thank you so much. I think people forget to thank the teams that, you know, easy we have a problem. Everyone who is a service provider never gets thanked because we are being paid to do this. So we want to thank Legacy and the entire production team for a job well done. This was being streamed live for all of the stakeholders. And I really want to, in a special way, thank, on behalf of PSFU, MasterCard Foundation. Can we give them a round of applause for investing in this data? And this will go a long way in supporting the communities, but also government's initiatives and the private sector's initiatives in the communities, but also the Private Sector Foundation for convening us this morning and unveiling. There is a lot of data out there, and a lot of the times people generate this data, put together this data, and no one ever disseminates it, but it is sitting on someone's desk in some office somewhere. This is really, really good. All right. So again, just to help Cecilia, the report will be available on the PSFU website. So you can download it there for those of you who don't want to struggle to find it. But also the link for this conversation this morning, maybe if Dr. Mwalimu wants to see himself, is also available. It will be available on all the social media platforms for a PSFU. But also this conversation we've had this morning, again, you can share this conversation with other colleagues and other stakeholders using the social media platforms for PSFU. And those are available. Let's share as much information. And finally, nyenda kusima imwe abeizire kuruga kamwenge, mwebare kwija, muturamukiza amumwasigayo, ntubagonza muno. And now to my Swahili, nataka kushukuru. Nyinyi yote wamekuja leo kutoka Kamwenge na vile zingine camp zingine, tunawapenda sana, and we want to send our regards to all your family and friends. For those who are watching and you're wondering where is the that child's voice coming from. We had young mothers in this room, so we have children in this room. So we had a diverse audience, from the youngest child in the room to some of the oldest people in the room, like Dr. Mwalimu. So that was how diverse our audience was, because we were speaking to persons of concern. Thank you so much. God bless and good morning.